It is such a delight to speak today from the platform of the World Leading Influencer Summit 2020. And just like everyone else thinks, there is no better time than now during this crisis to come together as thought leaders, educators, and professionals from all industries and share such wealth of insights. And I quote, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." This is one of the most famous phrases by Plutarch. This phrase actually had inspired me over the past 20 years, and I had posted it in the 3 offices that I worked in. It is sad to know that this phrase, written back in 1927, along with many other theories in education, published later, are not fully explored and implemented until this day. This is the year 2020. And now I think we have gone through such a very huge challenge with the coronavirus. I can excitedly say that finally 2 crucial areas in education have emerged. And I have struggled with these as a teacher and a director for the past 20 years, mainly with curriculum and assessment. And very happily, I say that they have just started to be taken seriously. For years as a student myself, and I prefer to use the word learner rather than a student, I have noticed how monotonous, how dull, how redundant the life of a child is and his journey throughout learning, throughout all those stages, from early education till later middle school, high school, and then into the workplace. And so is the case with teachers and even principals and directors. Now, I did not wish that such a crisis would come just to make us pay attention and open our eyes at what has been going through in education for the past years and notice that there must be some changes and the changes cannot be postponed any longer. Now, I cannot say I am very happy that finally those changes will be made because of the harsh conditions of the virus and all those restrictions that we were put in. But I am sure that we are all in the same boat. I am cognizant that sometimes it is only through harsh realities that we are forced to pay attention, to pause, to reflect, and of course, take action. And this is what we all need. So why is the need for a change in education now more important than ever? Because education is the field that produces all the other fields. In other words, educators of today are the ones responsible for the upcoming generation of leaders and the workforce of 20, 30 plus years in the 4 forms of industry, in the primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. And because of the fact that for decades, our world has been struggling on all levels, including education, to reach this stage when it can sustain itself. And here we speak about education sustaining itself means being able to graduate as many people as possible who are well-equipped, who can build communities and consequently build economies, because we are all thinking of relinquishing those levels of poverty, of hunger, of environmental issues. So through which educators themselves can endorse also success and be successful themselves as they feel that they are the drive for this change in the education process and its high expected yielding. So the real pivot of this talk actually is that given the gaps that before COVID and the immense gaps exacerbated by COVID, and we all know as educators and even other people in other industries, and I shared here a few, and mainly the COVID cohort facing drastic reduction of yearly and life earnings. For example, 5 months of school lockdown could generate losses that have a present value of $10 trillion. Also, more of the NEET group, those who are not currently in education, in employment and in training, and mainly women at this case. Also, mental health disorders, and this has been growing rapidly in the last year and a half. So our world cannot afford more losses. Very plain, very simple. We already have main challenges in education pre-COVID, And now we have even more due to school closures, according to TALIS 2018, and particularly in secondary education. So the solutions have become widely known through the influx of talks and discussions in the field of education and in the field of business as well, so that they try to find some pathways to implement the right plans. Now, and I'm sure I will not go in detail into that because I'm sure that my fellow speakers will be elaborating as well, but I have to mention here the future education, and these are our significant goals that we have to meet. So we have the future education that's embodied through the 21st century skills, competence-based education, also the Sustainability Development Goals 2030, which we all know about, and naturally digital proficiency. So the concerns is that having those plans almost ready for learners, presumably ready in all countries, we hope that, what is the spark that can ignite this grit, this perseverance, not only in learners, but also in educators, so that those plans will be well implemented? Because we all know that a plan that does not find fueled, excited people for success will turn out to be just another circle within another circle, and we will be going on in circles in the coming decade, which is definitely something we do not want. So when we think about what we really need in this kind of circle, what is the key? It is mainly curiosity. So, and curiosity, when defined, is the desire to search and investigate. This is its organic definition, its organic meaning. But curiosity has much more to learn about and to connect to what is truly needed. And the leadership that I'm speaking about today is not just leadership as we all know it. It can be applied to learners, leading the community, and another form of leadership essential in 21st century education and life in general, which is leadership of oneself. We cannot lead others before we successfully lead ourselves. And this is a very important point. And this also exceeds leaders as principals, as directors, as supervisors, as heads of departments, as we know them. Leadership here, it involves every school member. Leaders leading themselves and others, teachers leading themselves and their learners, and learners leading themselves. So that's the perfect equation. So the plans here are set. We already have the 21st century targets, which we know, 21st century learning, education 4.0, and Sustainability Development Goals 2030. And we have leadership in its forms as leading oneself and leading others. So the remaining here is to capture curiosity, to lead these processes to innovation and achievement. And this is not very easy to do, but of course it can be manageable when it's well planned. So how do we capture this, or how do we tap into the curiosity that we aspire? And here we speak about a process. First, we understand how curiosity functions as a cognitive ability. Second, as a leader of oneself, as a leader of others, we create this pathway or this line of sight that elaborates these goals and main action steps. We also conduct the methods that suits oneself and others, because this is very important, which I speak about also in my approach, tailoring to our needs. And point number 4, conducting parallel checkpoints. And here we have the mission at hand and we have the metacognitive process, so we can do those checkpoints so that we can do what we call evaluation. So keeping 21st century targets, of course, and leadership of oneself and others in the background in whatever we are doing. So our understanding here of curiosity and how our brain functions developed gradually. And here we speak about 3 networks cooperating to carry out the attention in our brains. First, through alerting, which is achieving and maintaining the state of high sensitivity to a stimuli so that we can pay attention to the stimuli and bring it in. Orienting, which is the selection of information from the sensory input, because we have so much sensory input. How do we select? That's the orienting. And the executive attention, which involves the mechanisms for monitoring and regulating our responses. And this differs from a person to another. So how does this happen? Now, when we think about an idea and another idea and another idea, whether through an external stimuli, a stimulus, or internal stimulus, something takes place, which is called conceptual blending. And this is the blending of two or more concepts. And here also, we can call it also idea linking. And it's in a research in 2019 by the Organizational Behavior and Human Decision Processes, when they explain how conceptual blending happens, or idea linking. Then we start to learn more. We started to learn recently from neuroscience that we as species, we are blessed with an advanced network, neural network, which when it is activated properly and consciously, we realize that we are blessed with amazing abilities. And this is something we can talk about for hours and hours. And Fredrickson actually in 1998 explains how positive emotions broaden thought action repertoire and build physical, intellectual, and social resources. And that is so important. So we are talking about here 2 decades of experimentation. We are talking also about people experiencing positive emotions. And this show patterns of thought that are notably unusual, that are flexible, that are creative, that are integrative and open to information, and of course, efficient. We also speak about those positive emotions that show an increased preference for a variety and accept a broader array of behavioral options. And this is so important. We don't have those fixed patterns. We can't have those fixed patterns all the time. And also these positive emotions show patterns, an increase in brain dopamine levels. And they also show optimism, and they show success, and what we call the subjective well-being, or the SWB. And this is very important. So here we speak now about content. And the content occurs at 2 levels, and it must, when we speak about locally versus globally, or nationally versus internationally. So we are speaking about governmental or ministerial and school levels as well. So the expansion here into an industry 4.0 necessitates that we are working in the framework of education 4.0, which means we are upskilling and we are reskilling our workforce. Therefore, now there is a demand for vocational training, the VET, STEAM, or the science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, media and information literacy, MIL. We have also civic education. We have cultural awareness, social and emotional learning, the SEL, mental health, entrepreneurship, etc. And I wrote about it that actually in my blog. Please check the post out if you can. The title of the post is Generic Skills Generating Thrust. It's very helpful. It explains this in details. Now, in relation to Industry 4.0, the United Nations, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as well, they call to action before 2030. So we have here a time limit. Therefore, education is expected to really stand for these goals and to tailor the processes as well, because without tailoring, this will not work. So it's not only about leaders leading others, it must be also about us. We are leading others innovatively. So there is a certain process here. Now, unfortunately, up till this day, we have no clear answers. Now, though we may politically, theologically, philosophically, but can leaders instill this confidence and curiosity in themselves and in their teachers to facilitate these processes and try to find answers within the classrooms to certain severe issues like poverty, like hunger, like climate change, like single-use plastics, the Amazon forests that are being burned, cybersecurity. Another element also is the data. And we all know that we have a lack of data on the one hand. And we also know that we really need to have those global centers for development. for growth and development. We also know about the big data dilemmas on the other hand, and consequently the need of useful data analysis, because without data analysis, we cannot monitor our processes. And without monitoring our processes, we cannot pinpoint our deficiencies. So when we tie all these properly, we reach this line of sight, this direction, which can lead us to the right action steps. And this is critical. We also speak about the behavioral scientists' concepts and viewpoints. For example, in Segrin and Abramson, 1994, they say that a degree of responsiveness is required to tap into curiosity, and that's so important. You target tapping into curiosity, but if there is no response from the viewer or the whoever is involved, then we cannot achieve that curiosity. We cannot tap into that curiosity. Now, what does this mean? This means creating those open channels of communication that can articulate the purpose more effectively through, for example, pipelines, through think tanks, through incubation hubs, through all types of clusters, masterminds, etc. So here, two phases are very important. And mainly we talk about the selection and the proactive thinking. Now, selection is how we select the right people to handle the right project. And we all know that many times very well-planned projects fail because they do not have the right people. And after when we select the right people, then we can expand. And here we may call it specialization because it condenses here expertise with the attributes of the staff. And we all know that we need these two. We need the expertise and the attributes. That's how outcomes are better. And so we can have the alignment with our targets. Now, during these times, expertise and talents, attributes are urgently needed to move from point A to point B. And then when we collect all those points from A to Z, all those points are reached evenly. Now, essentially, of course, is to have all those facilities and resources, because without the resources and facilities, this is not possible. So, for example, in design thinking, design thinking processes, these are great opportunities to evoke curiosity, because when the staff starts thinking about a theme and come together, the first thing they do is start asking questions. And I am a strong advocate for asking questions, because by default, when people start asking questions, that's when they start to be curious about something. And conscious leaders can take these variables brought out through this type of discussions and formulate a kind of construct, which will definitely need more information. And then whether it's still hypothetical, then they will put it into action. So what is important here is not the information as much as the experience. We can use lots of information, but when we put the information in the experience, that's when we start to see the proper and the correct unfolding of the situation. Because this experience, when multiplied by value, by usefulness, which is mainly set through the alignment, then it takes a new level. This is how we are staying within focus. So the research actually in 2012, it discusses this as creativity, which particularly mentions novelty and usefulness, and these are very important in relation to creativity. So from that point here, we have this construct that regenerates itself and evolves until one theme starts to solidify and then build up and extend also to major themes, to other major themes which we may never have thought of. So that's how curiosity is igniting creativity, as we have explained before, through conceptual blending. So, and when we think about some samples of curiosity enhancing practices, we have lots of that, such as, for example, attention, because attention cannot focus on many things at the same time. That's when we know what we are heading towards. This is the target, this is the point we are looking at. breaking patterns. For example, I spy with my expansive eye, not expensive, value charge, stories, and this is what can lead to what we all know as the aha moment. This is the moment of discovery. So then we come to the checkpoints, and this involves mainly metacognition, and I speak about metacognition in my approach thoroughly because this is so important to monitor, to observe and monitor the way we think and the way we learn and even the way we implement processes. So how we are leading ourselves first, how we are leading others, and how we can reach those innovative outcomes. And I mean here, of course, the right innovative outcomes. Throughout my PD experience, 13 years as a leader, actually, I had focused on one main thing, which is potential development. I started with myself at first, and I was a novice teacher naturally, and then that was back in the year 2000. And then as I gained experience in teaching, then I became a leader, and more experiences became more vivid and more meaningful. So which is mainly finding potential and developing it. Now, potential is inborn. It's born with us. It's innate. So it is there. We cannot say that no one has potential. And this is a very common error in most systems around the world, when we quickly make this judgment that there is no potential. He has no potential, or she has no potential, or even the learner has no potential. And this is wrong. The thing is, we have not figured out where the potential lies. The key is to find it, and only smart leaders can do so, because it can be hidden most of the time. It's invisible. For example, I was doing project-based learning since 2003, and I was just a teacher. I didn't know what that was at that time. I was just simply doing it because I just thought that it was exciting, and by logic, I figured out a method to do that type of teaching and learning, which later I discovered that it was called project-based learning and that it was a methodology. But I just did it by intuition, and it was honestly amazing. It all started with two questions. How can I make something out of my reading selection, because I was an English teacher back then, different from all the activities found in the teacher's edition? And this is how it all starts, by asking a question. For example, how can I make my learners like what they're reading and like the activity that they're doing? And this spurs curiosity, and it worked. And throughout this, I also did 3 years later what we now call as design thinking, but I didn't know that at that time. I just did that because I felt that it was the right thing to do if I did not want to do the traditional teaching that we all know. And it turned out perfectly well. So scientifically, we have explained it, but at a higher level, there is so much meaning and value to me, and which is mainly what we call self-motivation. It wasn't just being done to prove that I was a good teacher. I didn't care much to know this. I just wanted to see the results in my learners. And I extended these practices into leadership, actually, when I became a leader. So it was kind of, first it was a fragmented PD, but later, as I started to connect those dots, I created a robust PD system and PD program. And potential development was key to that program. And I knew how to do that, and I knew how to enrich it, because each one of those people had what I call this success trigger. Once you know that, everything turns out perfectly well, and it's different. And when you can enrich it, this is pure empowerment. And all this, I connected that to the school statement within this frame of the mind-heart coherence, which I usually talk about also in my approach, because we cannot simply work just by pen and paper, documents, computers. Education is built on soft skills, this relationship between colleagues. So we have to discover these strengths, and we have to align them with the school statement. Otherwise, our efforts are in vain. At least they will not be as effective as we want them to. And once you articulate it well to your team, then you can start triggering this curiosity, and the curiosity turns into creativity. And when it's done in the proper way, and when it's amplified, you can turn it into a system. And this is actually amazing. And now I call it Orbits, ORBITS, as acronyms to the following, and I can share it here with you. When we start having those curiosity-based questions, how can I make everyone involved so that it becomes a we, not only a me? It can't be only a we, by the way. It has to be a me as well, although we do not hear it this day. Nowadays, everyone is speaking about the we and not the me, but I think that it has to be a we and a me, because when you really take, when you want the success of a team, you want your success as well. When you want your team to achieve a certain task, you have to achieve that in yourself before you move to the others. So we have to start also by ourselves. So metaphorically speaking, either smile or cry together. You can't just plan things separately from others. Everyone has to feel responsible for the success. And this is what we mean by owning our success, owning our way. Also, for example, some curiosity-based questions like, I want to know how we can align to our current time features and how we can even go the extra mile. And that's so important. That's how we raise our standards. We can observe this continuous influx of updates in the field, and we can plan strategically to enhance our performance, because we know that the world is fast growing. We cannot keep doing the same task in the same way, because eventually this way will become the old way. One of the curiosity-based questions also is, to what extent do I trust myself and my staff? And that's so important, because everything starts with trust. And here we have to believe in our assets. It's not enough to know. We have to trust that those strengths in ourselves and the teams, and we believe that they are our assets. When it's your asset, means you cannot just get rid of that. You cannot just relinquish it for no reason. You will hold strongly to it. Another curiosity-based question, for example, is reasoning alone able to reach everybody and create the connections that I wanted? I wanted healthy connections. I wanted loving connections. What makes us work from the heart? How can we balance this stamina, this mind, and also our heart? Because you want passion in what's being done. And we all know that Dr. Andrew Armour in 1991 discovered what we call the little brain in the heart. Our brain, our heart is just like a brain. There are 40,000 specialized cells in the brain. These are called the sensory neurites. And we can talk much about that. And mainly it's this in the field of neuroplasticity. And this is very important because there is some type of intelligence in our heart, the same type of intelligence that is in our brains. Now, as a leader, I was doing that without knowing, actually. I just tuned in, and by intuition, I realized that we can make conscious, well-informed decisions simply by tapping into the heart. And I did that. It was most of the time, because I cannot say all of the time, but most of the time was successful, because here we are setting our energy in motion into the workplace, and we are integrating all this energy in motion into everything that we are doing as a team. So one of the curiosity-based questions, what should we pay attention to and give our all? You know what we say, give our all. And here, what we mean is that observations and data are not always positive. Sometimes observation and data can include negative variables, and we know that very well. So we all know that no size fits all, and I always say no school can be like another school. Every community is unique, and every community has to tailor to its own identity. So that's why I always speak about competing schools, and sometimes, unfortunately, schools copy each other, and that's not the right thing to do, because there should be this type of identity for each school. So here we speak about tailoring to our needs and aspirations. So here the qualitative and the quantitative data, once they are being collected, analyzed for quality, of course, then they are put into the SIPs. Then no SIP will be like the other SIP or the school improvement plan. It has to be different because the schools are different, the cultures are different. And another curiosity-based question: what if I do all those connections and remain unable to create harmony and health in my community? Because sometimes this happens. What if my solutions were lengthy and tedious? And that's why I speak about spot and solve our problems practically, because schools are different. They are similar in so many ways, but there are always differences. So there are certain intricate features for each school, and only a keen eye can detect those areas that need improvement. And these areas are never, most of the time, they are different from a school to another. So that's a very important point. Emergency-based questions as well, for example, or emergency and curiosity-based questions. So we are both investigating, but emergency means we have to think about the current situation. And we all know what happened during COVID due to school closures. So here we were asking questions, and the questions were worldwide, actually, in the hustle of the surge of COVID. What mode of learning? What safety measures? Can we reach all the learners? Can we achieve the same way we did pre-COVID? How are we going to continue our learning? How do we address this shocked community? Because we were shocked. Everyone was shocked. And let alone parents, because they had to be an active part of the education process, unlike before. To curiosity-based questions in phase 2, when the hustle stopped, what are our next steps? Let's investigate our goals. How can we design solutions? So in COVID terms, I have written about these in EduCovid free series that I sent in my monthly newsletters, and I mentioned and I worked thoroughly on 5 areas. First, accountability at all levels, learning losses and achievement gaps, alignment, school statement with curriculum, inclusion, equity as well, and home cooperation. And much of these details about the synergies and urgencies are found on my website on the resource page. I invite you to check those resources. They are very helpful, and they help educators and leaders navigate the crises and the land at the other edge, because it's different from a country to another. Now, we also have seen some numerous success stories, actually, of schools and communities handling COVID in terms of operations. Curiosity and COVID have some common features or similar features. First of all, COVID took us by surprise, no doubt about that. It broke our patterns in life. We were put into the VUCA mode, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It forced us to pay attention, and that's so important, to areas that were just taken for granted. And COVID now is up-leveling our thinking. It is pushing us to think in a more reproductive way. And here we have been trying to initiate more and more ways. Now, in terms of curiosity, curiosity is part of our minds and hearts. It's ingrained, but most of the time it's dormant, it's hidden, it's invisible, it's not known to others. It has to be triggered. And that's why we have to, one of the ways that we can do that is by breaking the patterns, what we call also the routines. And this is unfortunately when people keep doing the same habits day after day, then they will say, well, why isn't there a change in my life? Well, because you are doing the same routine. You have to start something new. You have to start a new path. So when we break those routines or those old habitual pathways, this disturbance can draw our attention to some matters that were hidden, that were invisible. And again, we have this aha moment. So what is the impact of conscious leadership that keeps asking questions for growth? And here we speak about the innovative leadership. First, when we start with curiosity, when we open our windows for problem solving, for collaboration, for growth, and here I mean in the domains will be definitely operations. All the duties and responsibilities are met, respected and met, and we will definitely have success at the professional level. With innovative leadership as well, we are allowing discovery, self-regulation, and autonomy. And the domain here mainly is the staff. We are trusting the staff. We are helping the staff grow personally, and personally, I mean success at a personal level. And also when innovative leadership, for example, cultivates advanced education, targeting education 4.0, then here we have success at a cognitive level, which we really need if we want to meet our 21st century requirements. And innovative leadership as well, working to meet the Sustainability Development Goals. This is success at a collective level. We have this kind of global and sustainable success. So that's how a coherence here is achieved between the targets and the outcomes. And this is the perfect equation. So it's important to carefully consider all our approaches as conscious leaders when we want to push forward towards curiosity. But it does have some pitfalls, some challenges, and I call them pitfalls because they are hidden dangers. And here we talk about what approach we want to adopt, stemming from our social norms, from embedded behaviors, from our biases, etc. For example, in the competitive market approach, when we focus only on winning the market through those short-sighted, through the superficial education, as it's written in one of the reports, in one of the research reports, here we will have this polarization of quality and outcomes, cognitive overload as well. And this is, for example, when teams become submerged with those unimportant quests and tasks and data. Also, curiosity becoming uncontrollable, and that's, for example, another danger. When teams are driven to investigate those dangerous zones sometimes of the world or of themselves, especially during this widely open global village. Now, we all know that we have cybersecurity issues, for example, or when curiosity becomes ambidextrous, which means it's giving attention to exploration and exploitation, and that's another serious factor. So this is something worth thinking about. So coming to the end of this presentation, now our education system is at a point of reinventing itself, and there is no time to waste, and we should not dissipate any effort. If education now does not wisely and meticulously adjust or address those repercussions, then we will be facing a serious challenge. The trigger actually has to be intrinsic. And when we say intrinsic means it starts with this ignition, with this inner call, with this inner push forward. That's curiosity. So let's learn how to ignite it and how to keep it bright. Thank you.